Alabama takes on Michigan in the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl. We're going to talk about that with a guy that knows all about the Rose Bowl and all about Alabama, one of my old tag partners. But first, let me remind you guys that you're at the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel, and I appreciate you being here. Like and subscribe. Let's talk some Alabama football. Roll Tide. What do you say, everybody? With Mike Johnson. You saw him in the open. And you need to be getting paid for those credits. I'm Mick Gillispie on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel, on the socials at Broadcaster Mick. And it's always great to talk to Mike. Man, it's good to see you besides watching you every day in the open.
Yeah, hey, listen, man. It's good to talk to you. I know it's been a while, but I miss chopping it up with some Bama folks on the daily, man. I've been working this week with the Georgia guy, Randy McMichael. Usually work with a bunch of Georgia people over here in Atlanta, man. So it's good to finally talk some Tide.
Yeah. We talked a lot of Tide back in the day. And now you're in Atlanta doing radio there, Falcons football and Georgia stuff every day. What was it like when Alabama beat Georgia again? Now you work there. Were people angry at you?
Well, listen, man. First and foremost, you know me. I'm the when you lose, say little. When you win, say less. And that's the best thing.
I'll drink to that, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, man. And here's you an Atlanta beer for you, a little Sweetwater.
Yeah, I like Sweetwater.
You and I actually did a show from there one time.
I know. It was awesome.
Now that I think about it. No, man, it's been one of those things that's it's been a lot of fun because you don't have to say anything. You know what I mean? It's you just kind of, hey, how's it going? And you just wait for that conversation to kind of wrap back around to, hey, I played a good game. So, yeah.
Great job, guys. Come on. Hey, when you look at this offensive line, of course, you were a two-time All-American and you were on the 09 championship team. How the hell did these guys pull it together like this? They were, as they say in the business, throwing guys out of the club against Georgia. I mean, you go from where this team was against Texas and at the beginning of the season to where they are right now. How the hell did they get there?
Well, I mean, I think really, and it starts and ends with Caden Proctor. I think he started to understand more of the fundamentals. I listen, man. You and I have had this conversation a dozen times. I'm an offensive lineman before I'm anything else.
Right.
And so, when you weigh 360 pounds, it's all about balance. I think that so many times as an 18-year-old, you think to yourself, I need to fire off the line and hit somebody in the mouth. And that's not technically true for an offensive lineman. It's more about, can I hit somebody with both of my feet on the ground? As an 18-year-old, you kind of want to get in that track stance. And a lot of times when you make contact, you have one foot in the air and the other foot on the ground, and you can kind of lose balance and, become disengaged. And honestly, as you move throughout the season, I thought Caden Proctor just did a better job of staying balanced on contact. And you mentioned it. I mean, Nazir Stackhouse is a name that I feel like was thrown, around Atlanta the entire season. And multiple times in that game against Alabama, he was just flat out, no white tees. We used to call those kind of blocks. Get out the club, man. No white tees allowed. So yeah, he was getting, thrown out the box a little bit. So, I mean, I just think it's all about balance. It's all about attention to detail. When you work as hard as a Nick Saban coach team does, then those details are going to get there. When you don't practice hard and, you have coaches that, maybe look past the details or, don't make you practice hard on a Tuesday or Wednesday, sometimes those don't come about throughout the season. So I think Nick just does such a good job of kind of holding those players accountable and making sure that they're focused on what they need to do. And you saw it come around. I mean, they've always had the talent. They've always had the big bodies. When you can put double teams together and you have 700 pounds coming at somebody, then you're going to have some success. So I thought they did a nice job of just focusing on the details down the stretch, man. And we saw it pay off against a really good defense in Georgia. And he had a lot of success up front.
You and I covered the 2015 season together on radio. and we watched all of those games. We went to the championship game together, and this team has been compared to the 2015 team. And I was late on the wagon. I mean, I even do a show with Jake Coker, Ryan Anderson. Both of those guys will come in here. We'll talk about it. And I didn't want to buy into it. But now I'm starting to think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this team really is like, like, okay, you guys are right. I didn't see it at the beginning of the year, but now I'm starting to kind of feel like this team is kind of like 2015.
I like to call that team the Joel Klatt team because of his take early in the season after that loss to Ole Miss that, Nick Saban was washed up. Lane Kiffin wasn't a good fit. They're not the dominant team up front that they once were, and that program's kind of washed. I actually tweeted at Lane and at Joel a couple of years ago that clip, and I said, after this clip, Derrick Henry would go on to set the single-season rushing record. Bama would win the national title. Derrick Henry wins the Heisman. All the above. I mean, it's just and I think a lot of these Bama teams are similar. Obviously, 2009, 2020 are the only teams that went undefeated without the hiccups in the year. And sometimes you need that kick in the butt, right? Sometimes these guys have to have that kick in the butt of showing back up and kind of being embarrassed on a national stage and having the highlight reels run throughout the day and in the food hall and seeing, how bad you got whooped and having the whispers of Bama's not the same and Nick Saban's falling off and he's lost his fastball. And, sometimes you need that. And so I think those two teams do have that in common where you got that kind of loss to a spread team that kind of made you look goofy at certain points in the game. And I think they do it differently offensively. Obviously, Milroe is kind of the Derrick Henry, I guess, personality of those offenses. But I think it's a pretty good comparison just when you look at how those teams kind of came along throughout the season.
Yeah. Well, it feels that way. And if they can complete the mission, maybe we'll be talking about them. But still got 2 games left to go, including one in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. I was there. I thought it was just a tremendous environment. It was like the Wrigley Field of college football. You played in that game. What was that experience like?
I'll never forget how beautiful it was. Let me say that first and foremost. I mean, it's just as picturesque as and honestly, when I look back on it, Mick, it feels kind of surreal. I mean, I've told you the story before of Keith Jackson being there at the coin toss. I mean, it's such a different dynamic now for these guys because Bama's been there. Bama is the dynasty. When we went in 2009, it had been 17 years. I mean, it was like, it was a newfound thing. And so I'm showing up. We practiced at Orange Coast College all week, 65 degrees and sunny. There was my first 4 years in college when you went to a bowl game, it was, hey, let's go find a bar. Let's find, whatever we need to do. It was none of that. I think we found an O'Charlie's one night. Me and a couple.
What games did you go to? Not the sidestep you hear, but I think I was at some of them. The
Cotton Bowl.
Went to that
05. Went to 2 back-to-back Independence Bowls.
Me too. Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. Okay, so you were there too. I don't know if we ever talked about this.
Yeah, not a lot of fun. And then obviously the Sugar Bowl. Which,
right. Okay.
Everybody overlooks the fact that I didn't play much in that game, and Andre Smith didn't play at all. So
you got hurt early. Let's not bring up that. That was bad.
Listen, if the quarterback and running back had been hurt, then we'd be, that'd be what people talk about that game. But left tackle and left guard get hurt, and that's not really where you want to point. But and then obviously Pasadena the following year. So man, I just remember us being down to business out there, man. It was picturesque. You get on the field, It was back still in an era where flash photography was still kind of a thing back in 2009.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean?
You say that? I see it, man. Yeah. I can see the kickoff.
Yeah.
The burnt orange and the crimson and the flashes. Now that you've mentioned it, I can see that. And you know what? You're right. We don't have that anymore.
Don't have it anymore. Keith Jackson does the coin flip, and he says, they call this place the hallowed grounds. And in the most Keith Jackson voice, he says, gentlemen, good luck. And I'll never forget as long as I live, man. God rest his soul, man. I'll never forget as long as I live.
Who was the other captains out there with you?
Rolando McClain, Javier Arenas. Okay. I'll never forget. We had the strangest national anthem in the history of national title games. I'll never forget it, man, because it's one of the things you don't forget. Do you remember who played the national anthem at that game?
I'm trying to remember.
The weirdest combination of people that have ever done a national anthem at a national title game. It was Josh Groban. God knows where that guy's at nowadays.
Yeah, right. Hot back then, though. Hot name back then.
Josh Groban, and it was flanked by Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, like
I was probably getting a drink, to be honest with you. I don't remember that.
They set off the fireworks, and I just remember thinking, "Oh, this is cool." But I thought, man, what a random pair of people, man! Like Josh Groban and Flea. All right, well, it's not exactly Whitney Houston, but I'll take it.
Oh man.
And I'll tell you another thing. I remember just a quick story. I remember the turf. That was one of the first years that they did the actual bowl game and the BCS national title. Before that, it was like the Rose Bowl was the BCS national title.
Right.
They wanted to add that fifth game, and you remember, I can't remember who it was that played in the Rose Bowl that year, the actual Rose Bowl, but they brought in all new turf. They brought in a completely new field in 1 week's time.
I want to say it was Oregon and somebody.
It might have been. But it was 1 week's time. They'd been Oregon and Ohio State. But it was 1 week's time. They brought in a whole new turf. I remember looking down at the turf the whole time thinking, man, this grass is kind of long. But, yeah, man. But, yeah, that's random memories.
Play?
Random memories. It was all right. I think it suited us well for what we were going to do. We had speed, but we weren't built on speed. And so I think it ended up suiting us pretty well.
USC Penn State? No, it would have been next year.
I remember it was a crazy game. I do remember that. Maybe it was it might have been Penn State. I don't know.
I think I'm a year. I think 2009 is really. Oh, here it is. Ohio. It is Ohio State.
Yeah. Who'd they play?
Oregon. Yeah. See, we were right.
Yeah.
Never question yourself.
No, man. No.
Just go with it. So when you see this team, when you've watched what these guys have accomplished, let's start with Jalen Milroe. Yeah. Have you ever seen anything like this before, where a guy could be, that dazed and confused game 2, and then just become, 6th in the Heisman voting by the end of the season? For me, I don't remember ever seeing anything like this.
No, you don't. And I think it obviously speaks to him and his character. And I went round and round with people, at the start of the year that would, call for Ty Buckner and Ty Simpson. And I always just laughed at that. And it's not that I didn't believe that those were good players, but it's funny to hear people question Nick Saban's ruling on who should be playing the quarterback position after he has seen every practice and every throw and broken out every piece of film that people could look at Nick Saban's assessment of a quarterback and go, no, you know what? We might need the backup, man. It always just cracked me up. So, I've never seen anything like it, man. He struggled so much on the intermediate throws. I think they did a good job. I think Tommy Reese did a good job of taking out what he was not good at. How many times, Mick, did we watch Tua drop back, throw into the flat, run some of the speed screens? He was so good at being accurate into the flat, getting the ball out of his hands, like a shortstop, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was like a shortstop. He'd get the snap and throw it out in the flat, and they just stopped trying to do that with Jalen. It was like, dude, this isn't really his game. He's got to be more deliberate in his throws. He's got to have more, crossing routes and some of the things that, get the ball out of his hand with comfortable throws. And so I think, Tommy Reese obviously deserves a lot of credit, but I don't know, people ask about him developing. I don't know if he developed so much the things he was bad at. I think they just stopped trying to do him. It was just like, hey, let's just erase this from the game, but do so many other things well, just narrow it down. Not only that, but, obviously the offensive line did come along and allowed him a little bit more leeway. So you're right. I've never seen a storyline like it throughout the entirety of a season. And so it's been fun to watch. I mean, I can tell you that. He's a great dude. You listen to all his interviews, man. He makes a lot of Alabama people proud. I can tell you that. I'm happy to even be associated with him based on the jersey that he wears. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I'm with you on that as well. What do you think about Alabama's run game? Didn't have Chase McClellan for the SEC championship. Roydell Williams stepped up. Jam Miller played well. And it doesn't feel like with this offense, you guys played, you had a Heisman Trophy back in Mark Ingram. You know who was going to get the ball, right? Maybe a little bit of Trent Richardson in there as well in 2009. But this team with the receivers and the running backs, there's not just a dominant force. They seem to spread it out, and different guys come up each game.
Yeah, listen, you know this more than anybody. I'm a Roydell Williams fan. We've talked about this. I'm a massive fan of his, man. To me, he has that extra half a gap shimmy that Bama I think you need the punch that Jason McClellan obviously brings. We talk about this with the Falcons all the time, to be honest with you, man. Tyler Algier rushed for 1,000 yards for the Atlanta Falcons last year. And what did they reward him with? You brought in an 8th overall pick in Bijan Robinson. And, I think it's just such a nice 1-2 punch. When the Falcons are successful, it's kind of a 2-to-1 ratio. And
right.
I think they've got to do a better job of sprinkling both those guys in. I think they both bring such a different dynamic. I still wish at times that they would give both those guys the ball in space in the passing game, the jump and dump 3-count screens that we were so good at, back in the 2009 season. But they've allowed them to go north and south. They stopped trying to move east and west with 360-pound tackles and just said, hey, let's throw these guys off the ball. And when they're playing with balance up front, you'll find a seam. I haven't been excited about Jace's patience a lot of the season, but I think that started to come around. And obviously, all those backs that you just mentioned have started to develop a really nice patience as they've gone throughout the year.
Mike, you covered the Falcons. When is Kirby going to announce that he's the new head coach?
Look, man, I know that
as I take a drink.
What's funny is the majority of Falcons fans would not like that.
No.
And it's not because they don't think he would be a good NFL head coach. It's because
enemy
they don't
number
want
one.
Him,
right.
They don't want him to leave to Georgia. No, man, I think he actually had this conversation today with Randy McMichael, who I was mentioning is a former Georgia player, but he played for Nick in Miami with the Dolphins and Will Muschamp and a lot of those guys. And so I was kind of asking him, what was Nick like as an NFL head coach? And he said he's a lot more relaxed. So they used to kind of play pranks on him from time to time. And I just thought that would be just like Kirby. If Kirby ever got an NFL job, he would be he'd be allowed to be a lot more relaxed. But look, man, I don't know what the future holds. They're trying to decide who the quarterback is, trying to decide if the head coach is going to stick around. They still have an outside shot at the playoffs at 7-8, which I think is kind of to the downfall of the entire NFL right now. But I don't know, man. I couldn't tell you what that team's going to be week to week. I know this much, Mick. They're not good playing outside, which is not good.
They leave the dome, right?
They leave the dome, man. They ain't very good. They ain't very good. So
well last question for you. Nick Saban. You played for Nick Saban. I've seen your handprints out in front of Denny Chimes. Seen your rings before. You know all about Alabama's head coach. Is this it for him if he wins?
Oh, I get this question a lot. I don't think so. I don't think win or lose, I don't think he's done. I think that, listen, everybody points to the beach house, the car dealerships, where college football is. I think that Nick wants a crack at the 12-man playoff that you're going to see. I think in Nick's head, or at least a little bit in the back of his head, you have to think that Nick probably thinks, dude, if there was a 12-man playoff for my whole career, we'd even ripped off a couple more natties. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way I look at it. Like
2010.
You used to be able to keep, right. You used to be able to keep those, when you had two teams going, it was like
last year.
Yeah. When you had two teams going, it was like, man, you could find an excuse to keep Nick out. Then when you went to 4 teams, you've almost found an excuse to keep him in a couple times, right? I mean, this year being one of those, it's like, dude, they've proven themselves. I mean, what's Nick's record in semifinal games? What's Coach Saban's record? I know I went to 1 loss in the Sugar Bowl in 14, but that's it. That's it, right? I mean, so when I look at it from that angle, man, I have to think that he thinks, well, if I can just stick through a couple of these 12-team playoffs, it was announced today, right, that you're going to get the home game in the quarterfinal a week before Christmas. I mean, dude, come on, right? I mean, if you're recruiting at Alabama and you have a home quarterfinal game, not that I want them to be in that game because that means they didn't get the bye. But you have a home quarterfinal game a week before Christmas. You can't tell me that Nick wouldn't have a little bit of success bringing some of those recruits in there, some of that NIL money. I don't know. A lot of people think that. I just don't think this is it. I think he's got at least one more. I actually said 3 years ago that I thought he had 5 more. I don't know what he's going to do, Mick. I don't haven't been around him, haven't had conversations with him. I don't know what else he's going to do. He doesn't strike me as. This is the guy who pulled me on a tube on his boat wearing slacks. You know what I mean? Like, like, what are we doing? He's not going to go sit and put his toes in the sand of the beach, man. So, I I don't think it's his last year either way. I think he gets at least one more crack at it, if not more, because I think he is going to have success in the 12 team, and we'll see, man. It's such a different program than it was 10 years ago. For the successes and what they've done this year, he seems to be having a good time, and so we'll see.
That's funny. That's killer. I'm going to be laughing about that all night. So tell everybody about what you're doing right now and how they can follow you and listen to your shows and stuff.
Yeah, man. We do the morning shift. It's called the morning shift here in Atlanta. It's on 92.9 The Game. We're the biggest signal, radio signal in the Southeast. So we're almost all the way to the Alabama state line. You can hear us on 92.9 The Game, and so we're on every morning 6 to 9 Eastern. Have a good time. Tiffany Blackman, who's CBS Sidelines, she's our host, and buddy of mine, Bo Morgan, we call him Squid Billy. He's another co-host, and just chop it up, man. Try to keep it light and airy every morning. That's 6 to 9, and also I'm doing pre and post for the Atlanta Falcons on Sundays on 92.9 The Game and all the syndicated stations around the Southeast as well. So you know better than anybody, man. I love talking the X's and O's on pre and post and kind of breaking down what's happening. Having a blast. Happy to be back in the sports media arena. But you can hit me on the socials at MPJohnson79 and keep up with all of it, man. So appreciate you having me.
You look a lot more laid back now that you're back in broadcasting and not dealing with high school kids anymore.
I was telling a story today, man. I coached 4 seasons as a full-time high school coach, and I think we won 6 games. So it's
that's no fun.
We were at the Vanderbilt of Georgia high schools for a little bit. So yeah, man. I miss coaching. I don't miss teaching, if I'm being real honest with you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, probably a little more. Also, you haven't seen me since my kids weren't infants, so I'm getting a little more sleep in that respect. So
there you go. Yeah. Merry Christmas to him, by the way.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Hanging out with Mike Johnson. Hey, I want to remind you guys a couple things. You can look behind him and see those Daniel Moore prints right now. If you want to get the Gravedigger print, 4th and 31, $25 off by using the promo code Gravedigger25. That expires on January the 1st. And always, you got the Bama Tailgate code, 15% off any regular priced item right now. So pimp out your man cave like we've pimped out ours. And I still think about that game. I got the same print right there that you have. And then I have yours right there. You signed it. But you didn't sign it for me. I just got it from them. You had already signed it.
Did you give me that one right there?
I might have. I think I might have. I think I might have done that for you. Hey, Roll Tide, my friend. Always great to see you.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Roll Tide.
All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. And don't forget to like and subscribe.